The laughter around the dinner table hit me like a physical blow as my sister raised her glass with that familiar smirk. "Where's your husband and kids, Grace?" Valerie's voice dripped with mock innocence. "Oh, right, you don't have any." My fork froze halfway to my mouth as the room tilted slightly. 7 years of paying their mortgage, covering Valerie's emergencies, funding Mom's medications. This was my reward. The chicken I'd just swallowed seemed to expand in my throat as Dad chuckled along, his eyes crinkling with amusement at my expense. The kitchen clock ticked 5 times in the silence before I found my voice. I set my fork down with deliberate precision and met my sister's gaze. "Where's your money, Valerie?" My voice came out steadier than I expected. "Oh, right, I've been supporting you until today." The smiles vanished instantly. Dad's hand tightened around his wine glass, and Mom's eyes widened in shock. For 7 years, I'd swallowed their dismissal with dessert, but something inside me had finally snapped, clean and irreversible. "My name is Natalie. I'm 32 and a financial technology specialist. This is the story of how I reclaimed my life from the family that treated me like their personal ATM. From the outside, my life looked put together. A waterfront apartment in Seattle's Capitol Hill, a senior position at a financial software company, quiet Sunday mornings with coffee and a view. What no one saw was where half my salary disappeared to every month. Mom had been a nurse until her heart surgery 3 years ago. Dad called himself an economic consultant, which mostly meant waiting for clients who rarely materialized. And Valerie, 4 years younger, infinitely more cherished, styled herself as a fashion influencer while influencing nothing but my dwindling bank account. Her texts always arrived with practiced urgency. "Hey sis, rent's due and I'm short again. Just this once?" Dad's calls always started with small talk before pivoting to the latest financial crisis. Mom simply assumed I'd cover her medications without discussion. I'd convinced myself this was love, keeping the family home from foreclosure, the lights on, the appearances up. I thought if I just gave enough, eventually they'd see me as more than their emergency fund. Every Sunday, I drove from Seattle to Tacoma for family dinner, bringing wine, helping clean up, listening to stories about Valerie's latest partnership or Dad's potential client. The photos on their walls told the story better than I could. Valerie in her pageant gown, Mom in her nursing uniform, Dad with important colleagues. I was always at the edges, the reliable shadow who showed up late because work came first, because someone had to pay the bills. That Sunday had felt different from the start. The tension hung in the air like something physical, making even the silverware sound too loud against the plates. "Valerie's been invited to that big fashion event downtown," Mom announced, pride lifting her voice. "The one with all the important designers." "Great exposure," Dad added, nodding approvingly, really putting herself out there. I smiled automatically, though my chest tightened. Exposure didn't cover rent. Pride didn't erase the thousands I'd transferred to keep Valerie's credit score alive. Valerie barely looked up from her phone, scrolling as she half listened. Then came that laugh, sharp, dismissive, breaking through my silence. "You should come to one of these events, Natalie," she said, her eyes flicking up. "Maybe you'd finally meet someone." The moment that followed her comment about my lack of husband and children burned everything away. My patience, my guilt, my willingness to be their safety net. Mom's nervous laughter and Dad's amused smirk were the final straws. After my response about supporting her, the room fell silent except for the ticking clock. 7 years of financial servitude ended with 8 words. I drove back to Seattle that night with my hands steady on the wheel despite the rain lashing against the windshield. For the first time in years, I didn't replay their words or question my reaction. I simply calculated. Every dollar, every sacrifice, every moment I'd lost trying to earn their respect. In my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and went straight to my desk. The stack of payment records I'd organized but never fully examined stared back at me. Evidence of years spent keeping everyone afloat but myself. I opened my banking app and watched years of transfers scroll by. $2,400 for Valerie's credit card debt, $1,850 for Dad's property taxes, $3,200 for Mom's medical bills, $5,000 for the new roof. The numbers blurred together. $84,763 over 7 years. The irony burned like acid. I built financial planning tools to help strangers manage their money, while my own bled away to family who saw me as nothing but a resource. My finger hovered over the Cancel Recurring Transfers button. The screen prompted, "Are you sure you want to cancel these payments?" I tapped yes without hesitation. One small movement, 7 years of obligation severed. The call started at 6:42 the next morning. "Natalie?" Mom's voice trembled with practiced vulnerability. "The mortgage payment didn't go through. Did something happen?" Then Dad. "The house payment bounced. Fix it." Then Valerie. "Rent's due. Send me $1,200. Hello?" I read every message, every guilt-laden word, and set my phone face down on the counter. By evening, the voicemails escalated from concern to accusation. "You can't do this to your family. After everything we've sacrificed for you. You're being dramatic and childish. I saved everything. The messages, the bank records, the voicemails, not out of vindictiveness, but instinct. Something told me this wasn't finished. Then came the text that confirmed it. Sunday dinner, 5 p.m. We need to talk." Not a request, an order. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, my pulse slowing rather than quickening. If this was the confrontation they wanted, I'd stop pretending I didn't know how to fight back. Sunday arrived under steel gray skies. The drive to Tacoma felt different. No rehearsed explanations, no guilt, just calm determination. I parked in front of the colonial-style house I'd saved from foreclosure 3 times in 7 years. The gutters still needed cleaning. The porch light still flickered. Nothing had changed, yet everything had. Inside, the air felt dense with tension and coffee. Mom bustled around the table, movements sharp and precise, avoiding my eyes. Dad sat at the head like a judge, hands folded. Valerie leaned against the kitchen counter, scrolling her phone with practiced indifference. "Natalie," Mom began without looking up, "we can't live like this. The mortgage, the bills. You know how hard things are for us?" I hung my coat over the chair and met her gaze steadily. "I know. I've known for 7 years." Dad's voice cut through the air. "Don't start. This family depends on you. You've always helped. Why stop now?" I turned to face him directly. "Because it's not help if it's expected. That's called exploitation." Mom dropped a napkin, the fabric fluttering to the floor. "You're being cruel." "No," I said quietly. "I'm being honest." Valerie snorted, still pretending to focus on her phone. "Wow, someone's found their backbone. Congratulations, sis." I faced her fully. "You know what's interesting? You mock me for not having a husband or kids, but you've lived off me like I'm your parent." Her head snapped up, eyes flashing. "Excuse me?" Mom jumped between us, hands fluttering. "That's enough. Valerie's still finding her way. You can't expect her to be as responsible as you." My laugh came out dry. "That's precisely the problem. You never expected her to be." Dad slammed his hand on the table, rattling the silverware. "Watch your tone. We're your parents. Show some respect." I met his glare without flinching. Respect is earned, not demanded. He half rose from his chair as if height could intimidate me, but I didn't move. The tension crackled between us like static electricity. Valerie's voice cut through the standoff, dripping with practiced venom. "You think you're better than us because you make money? Please, without us, you'd have no one." I took a measured breath. "That's the difference, Valerie. You need other people to define you. I don't." Her face contorted. "You're pathetic. You'll die alone with your spreadsheets and your empty apartment." I smiled faintly. "Maybe. But at least I'll die debt-free and on my own terms." Mom gasped. Dad muttered something under his breath. Valerie pushed away from the counter and strode toward me, finger pointed. "You selfish bit—" Before she could finish, I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick manila folder. The sound of paper hitting wood cut her words short. "What's that?" Dad demanded, voice tight. "Evidence," I said calmly. "Every payment I've made for this family since I started working. $84,763. Tuition, mortgage, credit cards, medical bills, home repairs, even the couch you're sitting on." Valerie rolled her eyes dramatically. "You're keeping score now? That's sick." "No," I replied evenly. I'm keeping proof. Mom's voice shook. Natalie, that's not necessary. It is, I cut in, because what happened after dinner last week wasn't just a family disagreement. Dad's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I slid another document across the table, a loan agreement with his signature and mine. This, the home equity loan you took out using my name. His face drained of color. That's ridiculous. Is it? I pushed another page forward, this one bearing an official bank seal. The bank disagrees. Forgery, identity theft, elder fraud. The charges vary depending on how far I decide to take this. Valerie froze, eyes darting between us. You called the bank? I didn't just call, I said. I hired Lauren Tanner. She's handling the case. Mom's hand flew to her throat. You brought in an outsider against your own family? I met her gaze without wavering. You stopped being my family when you used me like an ATM. You crossed the line when you forged my name. Dad leaned forward, voice dropping to a threatening whisper. You think you can threaten us? I didn't flinch. Not a threat, a timeline. You have 30 days to remove my name from every account and create a payment plan for what you've stolen. If you don't, Lauren files charges. The silence that followed was absolute. The wall clock's ticking seemed to echo through the room. Valerie's voice came out barely audible. You wouldn't. Try me. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Mom's tears started. Soft, practiced, perfectly timed. Sweetheart, we only did it because the bank wouldn't extend our loan again. Your father's business has been struggling and we thought that I'd clean it up again. I finished for her. You didn't think. You counted on it. Dad's face hardened into granite. We're your parents. And I was your insurance policy, I replied. Not anymore. Valerie sank into a chair, suddenly looking younger than her 28 years. You're destroying us. I gathered the folder back into my arms. No, Valerie, I'm saving myself. As I turned toward the door, Mom's voice cracked behind me. Natalie, please, we can fix this together. I paused at the threshold. I spent years fixing things you broke. This time you'll fix it yourselves. Outside, the air smelled like approaching rain. Through the living room window, I could see them. Mom crying into her hands, Dad pacing with his phone, Valerie staring blankly at the table. For once, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. 2 weeks later, Lauren called. I was working from home, reviewing code when her name flashed on my screen. My heart raced as I answered. The investigation's complete, she said. The bank confirmed the forgery through their handwriting analysis and document verification. Your name's been removed from all their accounts, and they've agreed not to press charges as long as your parents sign the repayment agreement. For a moment, I couldn't speak. 7 years of pressure dissolved in a single breath. So it's really over? Lauren's voice softened. Legally, yes. Emotionally, that's up to you. I thanked her and hung up. Crossing my living room, I stood by my apartment window watching ferries cross Puget Sound, their lights blinking against the darkening water. I thought about everything I'd sacrificed trying to earn love that should have been freely given. That evening, I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion that never seemed to arrive. I poured a glass and raised it toward the Seattle skyline, to endings, to beginnings, to boundaries that finally meant peace. 3 months later, the bank's automated notification system sent an email to my account. I'd set it up after discovering the loan forgery. I'd found the document while organizing my tax records and noticed the signature didn't match my handwriting. Now a real estate listing appeared in my inbox, a foreclosure notice for the Tacoma house. The familiar peeling paint, the creaking porch steps, the dining room where everything had finally broken apart. A red banner across the image read, "Foreclosure." I didn't feel triumph, only acceptance. When you build a life on someone else's sacrifice, the foundation eventually collapses. A week later, Mom texted, "One last dinner before we leave. Please come." I hesitated, then replied, "I'll be there at 6. Not out of obligation, but closure. When I arrived at the Tacoma house for the final time, moving boxes filled the hallway. The room stood half empty, the familiar scent of Sunday roast replaced by cardboard and dust. Dad looked older, shoulders slightly stooped. Valerie sat quietly, phone face down for once. We ate takeout pizza in near silence, no one pretending this was normal. When we finished, I finally spoke. "I'm not cutting you out of my life," I said carefully, "but I won't be your safety net anymore. If you want a relationship with me, it starts with equality and respect." No one argued. For the first time in my adult life, silence between us didn't feel like war. It felt like understanding. "Where will you go?" I asked, breaking the quiet. Mom glanced at Dad before answering. "Your aunt in Portland offered her garage apartment until we get back on our feet. She's letting us stay rent-free for 6 months." "And after that?" I pressed gently. Dad cleared his throat. "I've applied for a position with an old colleague's firm. It's entry-level, but it's something." I nodded, then turned to Valerie. "And you?" She looked smaller somehow, sitting amid the half-packed boxes. "My roommate from college is letting me crash on her couch in Olympia. I've got an interview at a department store next week." Her voice had lost its edge, replaced with something unfamiliar, humility. As I left, I paused at the door and looked back. The house that had held so many years of resentment seemed smaller, somehow almost fragile. "I'll check in next month," I said firmly. "Not with money, but a phone call. We'll figure out what kind of relationship we can build, one that's healthy for all of us." Mom nodded tearfully. Dad managed a stiff nod. Valerie gave me a half smile that, for once, held no mockery. Driving back to Seattle, I rolled down the window despite the cold. The air tasted like salt and possibility. I thought of all I could finally make room for my own savings, my own dreams, my own future unburdened by obligations I never agreed to. In the months that followed, I accepted a promotion, started a night class in graphic design I'd been postponing for years, and booked my first solo vacation. My life was no longer divided between what they needed and what was left of me. Sometimes I still think about that Sunday dinner, the laughter that cut like glass, the moment I finally said no. For years, I believed that love meant sacrifice, that being a good daughter meant carrying everyone's weight, but real love doesn't drain you. It doesn't demand your peace as its proof. Now, when I watch the sun slide behind the Olympic mountains from my balcony, I don't feel bitterness, just calm. I learned that saying no isn't cruelty, it's self-preservation. If you've ever been the one holding your family together while they tore you apart, I want to hear from you. Tell me where you're listening from and what line you finally had to draw. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.